Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. In a moment, you'll see our good buddy John Steppe with the Gazette, thegazette.com, and you'll see all of John's social media and where to see his fantastic work at the bottom of the screen throughout the segment, as you do all our guests throughout these Hawkeye shows. But I got to tell you, John, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. It's always great to see you. Got the California glow. You are one of very few reporters that traveled out west to cover the Hawks playing at the Rose Bowl, not the Rose Bowl game, but a game at the Rose Bowl where UCLA plays their home games. But tough result, John, 20-17 Hawkeye loss. Of course, Brendan Sullivan gets hurt in the third quarter. In comes Jackson Stratton. Thought he acquitted himself quite nicely for a quote-unquote 15 backup quarterback in from Colorado State. Transfer portal rears its head again, John. So, again, thank you. Good to see you. And how you doing, John?
I'm great. Good to be here.
So let's talk about it. You went out west. We had good feelings, good vibes. And Hawks started off big, 10-0 lead. Okay, here we go, John. We are rocking and rolling. And then the bottom drops out even before Brendan Sullivan got hurt. Just some missed opportunities. And I'm going to leave it there and let you fill in the blanks. What happened, John?
Yeah, kind of the most jarring thing was probably on the ground, where UCLA was very much not a very good team at running the ball. And they had a fantastic game running the ball against Iowa's defense, 211 yards, something that I don't think anybody saw coming. And then at kind of on the other side of the field, you've got Iowa's rushing attack did barely anything, whereas 80 rushing yards on 31 carries. I think that works out to be 2.6 yards per carry. So you look at that and you say, really, both sides on the ground, Iowa couldn't get the job done. And this is a UCLA team that had momentum with their back-to-back wins. And now all of a sudden, Iowa's momentum has come to a grinding halt. And you were mentioning the quarterback injury with Brendan Sullivan. Ankle sprain was what Kirk Ferentz said afterward. But you look at it, unfortunate circumstances to be going down to Jackson Stratton, who really, I would say, would be your number 4 guy after McNamara and Sullivan, depending on which time of the year, depends on who's 1 and who's 2. Marco having his injury, his hand injury being 3, and then going down to Stratton at 4. I thought he performed admirably as expected. But when the defense can't make that stop, when you're punting the ball with about 4 minutes to go and 2 timeouts left, you really need to get the ball back there, and they didn't. And really, you look at it, underwhelming defensive showing, and really the struggles on the ground were kind of one of the 2 big storylines from that game.
Yeah, that was the heartbreaker. Couldn't stop UCLA on third downs. And that 3rd and 8, they threw a 6-yard pass, and the receiver backpedaled into a 3-yard gain at yards after the catch and got the first down. That was your ball game. Would have loved to see what Jackson Stratton could have done in that last drive if he could have brought the Hawks to a game-winning touchdown or a game-time field goal. But yeah, as you mentioned, they even talked about the Hawks did about bringing James Rezar back from switching him over to defense back to offense and being the backup quarterback. But I agree with you. I thought Stratton did well, especially just coming in cold like that. Let you and I talk a little bit, John, about the availability for the coordinators today, the press availability. As we record this late Tuesday afternoon on November 12th, you got a chance to talk with LeVar Wood, special teams coordinator, Phil Parker, defensive coordinator, and Tim Lester, offensive coordinator. Let's talk about that today, please, John.
Yeah, a good opportunity to talk to all 3 coordinators, as is kind of typical for an Iowa bye week. Couple takeaways from each one. First of all, with special teams, LeVar Woods, kind of one of the big themes was consistency. This is a special teams unit that's given up 2 punt returns for touchdowns this year after going several years without giving up any. And LeVar was talking about inconsistencies with punts, inconsistencies with the coverage units. So that's been a big theme there. One interesting quote, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the quote right in front of me, from Phil Parker was, he mentions how, okay, you've got the 8 returning starters coming back this year, and, everyone thinks, okay, that means you're going to be good again. But still, what they're doing is challenging. And I think you saw that very much against UCLA. I would say you probably saw it very much against Michigan State as well. And that's certainly something that Phil Parker is aware of. And then offensively, it's an interesting time right now for the quarterback position because, okay, you've got No McNamara, no Sullivan right now. We'll see how they progress in terms of their injury recoveries in the next week or so. No Marco Linus. James Reesar moved to wide receiver, but even regardless of that, he's hurt as well. So you look at it in an interesting time for the quarterback position. But Tim mentioned that, overall looking at the passing game, not up to par right now. So those were kind of some of the themes in terms of, the uncertainty at quarterback, not up to par in terms of passing production. And the question inevitably came up about the transfer portal, and Tim Lester is very much embracing of that in terms of that's something that just in this current state of college football, you have to look at every year and at every position. So could potentially see some portal shopping in 4 weeks or so when the portal comes open.
Well stated, because look at what the Hawks have done. Brendan Sullivan, a portal transfer from Northwestern. Jacob Gill, a transfer portal. Without those two guys this year, of course, Cade McNamara, we know, was a transfer from Michigan, but now you mentioned with Jackson Stratton, from Colorado State. So, yeah, I bet you Tim Lester is A-okay with the transfer portal. I mean, at least we all know, John, it giveth and it can taketh away, too. But as of right now, the Hawks are benefiting from that. And I talked about that in pretty great length with Marvin McNutt last week, how well that's worked for the Hawks. We mentioned the Maryland game being on the Big Ten Network, 11 o'clock kick next Saturday. Again, bye week this Saturday or this weekend. And then, of course, the Black Friday game against Nebraska. 6:30 kick on national TV, NBC. So, John, how are we looking moving forward? So the bye week, things are relaxed a little bit, somewhat relaxed. They're still working. Let's not get that twisted. But a week off, get ready next week, and they'll be facing Maryland and then Nebraska to close out the season. Kirk Ferentz has an opportunity to, and with the bowl victory, could tie Woody Hayes if the Hawks go 3-0 and run the table. This week, last week, lost to UCLA, hurt him being the all-time winner. So we'll have to wait until next year for him to pass Woody Hayes and be the all-time leader. How do you see, after talking with the coordinators today, how do you see the next upcoming weeks playing out, John?
Yeah, I think it's a favorable final path. Granted, you would have said that before the Michigan State game, and you would have said that before the UCLA game. So really nothing to be taken for granted. This Maryland team is interesting. They're a team that have done some good things in terms of beating USC. I think that certainly got a lot of people's attention, but this is also the same team that lost by 25 to Minnesota. So there's been some ups, some downs. Probably the most interesting storyline is going to be that Sir Brian Ferentz right now is working as an analyst. So it'll be a little bit of the Ferentz Bowl in College Park, Maryland for that one. And then Nebraska is a team that had some excitement, I would say, earlier in the season, and some of that excitement has faded. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but some of that excitement faded after a loss to UCLA that people didn't seem to be expecting. So kind of interesting there, but this is a Nebraska team that should probably be bowl eligible this year. So you look at it, and I would say neither of these are totally cakewalks, but both of these are games where the Hawkeyes should be favored kind of going into this final stretch here of the 2024 regular season.
I'm glad you went there, because the Hawks are bowl eligible, and I haven't mentioned that earlier in the segment with you. So they are, with the 6 wins, they're 6-4 now, 2 games left. So regardless what happens, they are bowl eligible. Whereas you mentioned Nebraska's not, and you said, stop me if you've heard this before. No, it's against Nebraska, so I'm good. You just keep going, John. But I will say this to you: in the next segment, we're going to take a break now. John is kind enough to join us for 2 segments. We're going to talk about John's AP vote. John's an AP voter. We're not going to get into specifics, but John's also a Heisman voter. So cool stuff. John's got some national prominence, as we know. Great writer. But he's also going to talk. He covered the Hawkeye women's basketball team. So we're going to talk to John in this next segment a little bit about the AP Top 25, but then go a deep dive into the Hawkeye women's basketball team under Jen Jensen now. Pretty cool stuff. So, John, thank you for agreeing to join us for both segments. We talked some Hawkeye football. We'll transition into Hawkeye women's basketball. So thank you so much, my friend. We'll be right back. You good to go for the next segment?
Absolutely.
Look forward to it. Thank you, John, so much. So for John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeyed and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pleased as always to be joined by our good buddy Jen Steppe from the Gazette, beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes. You see all of John's information at the bottom of the screen to see where his handiwork can be found. Great stuff. So John is an AP voter, as I mentioned, top 25, Heisman voter as well. John, let's talk a little AP for a second. But I do want to mention before you get to that, the Hawkeye women have their highest seed going into the postseason for the national tournament in soccer. Men's wrestling off and running big time, great way. We'll talk about that as the year progresses. Same with the Hawkeye women's wrestling program, off to a great start in a big way. The former or returning national champions. Going to be great to talk about that. But John, let's you and I talk. I talked at great length a couple of weeks ago with Sean Bach about the men's basketball team. A couple of games this week as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, November 12th, late in the afternoon. The Hawks play tonight at Carver Hawkeye against South Dakota. Then they play this weekend. By the time this show airs, they'll be playing in the Quad Cities against Washington State. Should be a fun game. Hawkeye women tomorrow night, Wednesday. They face Toledo at Carver Hawkeye Arena. And then a test, I think, going to Drake on Sunday. It'll interstate rivalry there for the state championship. That'll be fun, interstate rivalry. So, John, let's talk AP and go into Hawkeye women's basketball. You're an AP voter. How did it shake out for you this week? The Hawks were nipping at the heels. We heard him mention last week, 27th, 28th, maybe 26th, but losing to UCLA, out of the picture now. Talk to us, please, about your vote and where you are with the AP, please.
Yeah, I gave Iowa last week serious consideration. I did not include them on the poll. I think they ended up getting 2 votes from somebody having them at number 24. So they were in that other receiving votes group.
Talk to me about your experience with this Hawkeye women's team and what you've seen so far, John, please.
Yeah, early part of the season, small sample size, but certainly some encouraging signs. I thought the Northern Illinois game was not exactly perfect, but you're going to have some bumps in the road with a young team, and you look at it to still emerge victorious and by a decent margin against Northern Illinois. Okay, if that's your bump on the road, that's a pretty good spot to be in. Mm-hmm. Then with that Virginia Tech game, you look at it and you're continuing to see Lucy Olson really step in to her role really well. And you look at it, I was kind of curious what it was going to be in terms of her transition from Villanova to Iowa. You look at it, the Big East, not the strongest women's basketball conference. So, okay, what was that transition going to look like? But she's immediately shown the ability to be a proven scoring threat, a proven distributor. So you look at it and there's no replicating Caitlin Clark, but you have to have somebody in that spot, and having Lucy Olson really is not bad. So I've been impressed with her. I've been impressed with the development of Hannah Stuelke. She is somebody who exited for a quarter with a possible injury that turned out to not be an issue against Northern Illinois. So I think everybody took a deep sigh of relief there when she was able to come back on the floor in the second half there. So certainly some encouraging signs for this team, but this is still early. This Virginia Tech team that they beat, obviously the Hokies have had some pretty good years recently, but that's a team in transition as well. So it's an interesting matchup in terms of 2 teams that went through coaching changes and have a little bit of a different look. Iowa, of course, is a little different than most teams that the coaching change in terms of just how similar it is. But you were mentioning with getting Sydney Folder back, that's a key part of this team too. And you look at it, even with last year's kind of litany of senior players who are really good, she was able to really carve out quite the role for herself. And I would expect as they kind of gradually get her back into, 100% shape, they have the recognition that, hey, it's a long season. But once she does get to that 100% point, I think she's a key part of this 2024-25 Iowa women's basketball team.
I really love seeing how the cupboard isn't bare. And by that, I mean young players. Taylor Stremlow has really stepped up. You're right. I don't want to get overly excited or be hyperbolic, but it is good to see some developing young players coming in too. And a lot of players that didn't get a lot of minutes, like Taylor McCabe in the past. And, Kylie Feuerbach has really stepped up, and she's had some meaningful minutes, but still has done well early. Again, as you said, early this season. I don't want to get ahead of over my skis here, but I really do like what I see so far. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Addison O'Grady going 9 for 9, the perfect game, so to speak, in college basketball. 9 for 9 against Virginia Tech, and what a dominating force at times she can be inside. So hoping for more consistency for her to increase her playing time and be consistent. Because if anybody knows the post, it's Jen Jensen, who is the post whisperer, is now the head coach. And of course, Randy Peterson, former Hawkeye great player and great coach throughout Iowa, college for a while. But now she's on Jan's staff. A lot of great stuff. John, it's a very good feel-good story. And let's not forget, this season again, without Kate Martin, without Caitlin Clark, John, they're sold out for their home schedule. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, it's been impressive. Like, I really have to tip my hat to Iowa fans, because the way that this fan base has supported this team over these last couple of years is really special. And you don't have that. If you took a tour across every team that's been ranked in the top 25, you're not getting this type of fan support everywhere. So it's really something special and something that is not lost upon me in terms of, I've seen other teams that have been, top 25 and have gotten a fraction of the fan support. So it really is impressive how really this whole community has rallied behind this team and continues to rally behind this team. And it helps too that they're putting together a really good product on the floor. So yeah, the best way to keep that fan enthusiasm is when they beat a team like Virginia Tech by 19. So you look at it, and certainly I would expect a lot of excitement to continue throughout the season. And, there could be some ups and some downs here, but so far so good for this team.
And I've talked to Jen Jensen and Lisa Bluter in the past on this show, and former players in Caitlin Clark, Monica Sonano, and the community. And so it's easy to see why the fans love this team. Plus, as you mentioned, they're going to continue to play a fun brand of basketball. Not that much of a departure from Lisa Bluter. Obviously, Jan being her assistant for 25 plus years and being a former player with Lisa Bluter, Jen Jensen was, and an All-American, one of the greats back in the heyday. So this is going to be fun. And again, I got to tamp my enthusiasm a bit because, as you've cautioned, it's early in the season. But I'll put it to you this way, John. I like what I've seen so far, and I hope it continues. And I know you do too, and on the viewers as well. But John, it is always great to catch up with you, doing multi-duty today for us with women's basketball, covering it, but also John's an AP voter, a Heisman voter, covers the Hawkeye beat for the Hawkeye football team for the Gazette.com. And again, you'll see all of John's social media and where to see his handiwork at the bottom of the screen throughout this segment, along with mine and the rest of our guests. But John, I can't thank you enough for both segments today, but all the good work you always do and joining us. Always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Truly. For John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara. This is Hawkeye. We'll be back to close out the show on our sports betting segment with our good buddy, Scotty P. Scott Pritchard. Back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Farming comes with a lot of frustrations, but the number one conversation you don't want to have is when your local seedsman says, "I'm sorry, we don't have that hybrid that you early ordered and paid for." Hi, this is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds. We do business a little different. We call it the Mershman Seeds No Substitution or It's Free Guarantee. If we do not deliver the hybrid that you ordered, the substitution will be free. Contact your local Mershman Seeds dealer today, and we'd be happy to increase your corn yield with our best hybrids. From Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our good buddy Scott Pritchard joining us. Scotty P, of course, a Northeast Iowa native like I am. At Pritchard Wins via social media or Pritchard'sPicks.com. Be sure to check out that fantastic show he does, Let's Bet. But in the Big Ten, like we talk about, now that 18 teams are there, the West Coast teams, East Coast teams, Penn State went 3 time zones westward to face USC. Hawks, again, like I mentioned this last week, go from Iowa City 2 time zones west to UCLA. Or the Rose Bowl. So let's talk about that. How do you, as a professional sports bettor, and how should our viewers who dabble in this, how do you consider time zone changes, Scotty P?
To your point, especially with the Big Ten now, with the so many more teams, you have teams, at least for Iowa, they're in the Midwest. It's 1 or 2 time zones. But, here when you're talking about pro football as an example, I always look at, did a team play Sunday night, Monday night, or Thursday night? Do they have extended rest? Do they have a short week on a Sunday and they have to travel not 1, not 2, but 3 time zones? And then if you look at Denver, the Broncos, or Colorado State for college football, or NBA, the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz, high altitude, thin air, time zone. I mean, I travel. I'm 60. I travel the world, and I'm telling you, I'd like to say I deny jet lag, but it's very real. Even when I was younger, it was very real. It's tough to win on the road. You throw in a short week, you throw in a revenge factor for the home team, you throw in the home cooking, the home crowd, and not to mention refs tend to favor you a little bit because no one wants to be booed by 60,000 fans late. So it's always challenging to win on the road. And to your question, yes, it's a big part of my handicapping, but what I'm sharing with you is nothing that the odds makers don't already know, and they've already factored in. So that's where it's delicate. That's why this is not for the faint of heart. You have to have a short memory, you have to have thick skin, and yesterday's history, today's a mystery.
I like the way that you said that, because you and I have talked about this in the past. Unless the team is on a heater or a real cold stretch, for the most part, like you said, I love what you always say. It's a 3-hour contract. You have commitment issues. You're on to the next. So get done with that game, move onward and upward. Of course, injuries play in. The injury report, of course, plays into your factoring. Weather conditions, as you mentioned, is it a divisional rivalry? Is it a rivalry game? Some teams may have the book on another team. They know them really well. That type of thing. But I really appreciate you taking us inside, because last time you joined us, you talked about, and I think this is very salient to reappear today. When you take a look at props, and again, Sam Laporte is day-to-day for the Lions this week, but George Kittle had a big week. We're talking 2 former Hawkeye tight ends. TJ Hawkinson working back into form with the Vikings. This will be his 3rd game back this week, and he had a big week last week with 8 catches. Eased into it the first week with only 3 catches his first week back from that just unbelievably terrible knee injury he had last year around Christmas last year, and he came back early after only 10 and a half, 11 months of rehab. Unbelievable, Scotty P. But when we talk about props, so now that you talk about time zone travel and that type of thing, I still want you to re-highlight looking at props and why, because I think your explanation to this is fantastic and so on point. Please.
Well, another case in point, I mean, first of all, your viewers are way sharper than most, because I know that sports betting is legal now in the state of Iowa. So these questions that you're getting via your viewers, I'm telling you, they're pretty advanced questions. So I learned everything the hard way, and I'm telling you, there is an advantage to betting props. The sports books respectfully have 7 days and nights to get the point spread, side, total, money line accurate, but they oftentimes don't take as much energy and effort into props. There is value. Last night, I played 3 props. I hit 2 out of the 3. Colby Parkinson, tight end for the Rams, under 17.5 yards. Even I couldn't find a way to lose because they'd never passed to the guy one time. Winner, winner, steak and lobster dinner. The one that I lost was under 71.5 yards. The Rams receiver, Nakua, who ended up with 98 yards. And then off the top of my head, I don't quite remember. I'm trying to think as I'm talking to you, but I know I cashed 2 out of the 3 tickets, but they limit me to a dime on those. But again, 500 to 1,000 a pop, it adds up at the end of the day.
Absolutely, it doesn't. When Scotty P gives these time references, remember, folks, we record this on Tuesday afternoon, November 12th. Scotty P, 31 plus years out in Vegas as a full-time professional sports bettor, 66 plus win percentage. And folks, as you know, the industry average, if you go 52.4% or better, you start making money. That's what it takes to break even. Well, you can see my guy is world class and kicking, you know what, as you always say, Scotty. So great to see you again, my friend, as always, and thank you so much.
I appreciate the kind words, but please understand, I've gone from one of the world's worst sports bettors to one of the world's best. My success leaves clues, and I was fortunate in the late 1990s and early 2000s to actually work with and for a professional sports betting group that moved a lot of money for the living legend Billy Walters, to where I was always an independent critical thinker. And when I was working, I asked a myriad of questions, a ton of questions, and I flat out learned from the best, and ultimately now have become one of the best per my duplicatable winning record year in, year out. I did hit 66% winners ATS versus the spread documented, and then I repeated it the next year. This year I'm at 59, 60%, but again, I like to downplay things more than I never do pie in the sky. I'm very honorable. I'm very ethical. You're going to hear about it when I win, but conversely, you're going to hear about it when I lose. This is a dog eat dog cutthroat business. Money management is key number 1.
I love that. And you always talk about patience. And I also appreciate you taking us inside saying, hey, it wasn't always roses and teacups. You struggled early, as you do, and you learn a profession. And I appreciate your candor and your honesty. Yeah, 66% plus documented last couple of years. Now this year, still 60%, as I always tell people, a 60% comment is still true, because in your free picks, it's still 60%. So Either way you slice it, and I appreciate your candor, you are right on the money. Folks, if you're doing 60% or plus or 66% or plus, you're in Scotty Pritchard's territory. You're in good shape. So, Scotty, my friend, as always, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Keep up the good work, my man.
I will if you will. That's a promise I can make for sure. So, for Scott Pritchard, at Pritchard Wins via social media or pritchardspicks.com. Thanks to Scott Pritchard. Also, thanks to John Steppe from the Gazette for joining us, and my production partners at Better Edge and BetterEdge.com, Greg Kajewski and James Siles, and to you, the viewers, of course. Thanks as always. So, for Hawkeye, I'm Dave O'Hara. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.